Professor Dinkalu, if I may come in here, the issue about hijacking in Bielsa, that was what I was talking about, tying it to the activities of the politicians. Hijacking in Bielsa, that wasn't the only place where there were reports of hijackings. We understand that some other parts in Imo State, Imo West, for instance, they did not have elections because some of the election materials were taken away by electoral officials. And in another location, some hoodlums came in and took away the election materials. Or in Gombe, for instance, where election officials were attacked and some of them were killed.
Yeah, I want to be careful, particularly given that I'm speaking here as the chair of the National Human Rights Commission, and some of these things may well involve issues that could conceivably come before the National Human Rights Commission, or in which the National Human Rights Commission may play a role. So I don't want to discuss specific cases. I want to discuss patterns and typology. Ballot snatching, stuffing, and the lot has happened in the country historically. In my view, the way to deal with each of those and any of those is through institutions, enforcement, the capabilities of the criminal process, and the security agencies, and in many cases, and of course the electoral administrator, that's the election management body, INEC. And in many cases, they're making the effort to do that. In my role as the chair of the National Human Rights Commission, I will support them to do that. Historically, again, in our country, elections have been decided and figures have always been manufactured in two locations: the Sahelian Rim in the north and the coastal littoral in the south. In the creeks manufacture a lot of things. In the Sahelian Rim, we also manufacture a lot of things. Historically, I'm not speaking about these elections because this is still an ongoing experience. INEC is investing in trying to make this as credible as possible. And I owe them the responsibility, and I owe that to the Nigerians who sacrificed so much yesterday to make sure that I support that as best we can institutionally.
Well, I'm coming back to the studio now. Dr. Yusuf, you were saying that Dr. Dinkalu is already beginning to set the agenda for whoever it is going to take his seat. But the report that we got from Bielsa, from our correspondent, largely okay, was same from what we heard from that collation officer. But the reports of hijack of materials in some polling units, even though the security agents were able to stem that on time. Do you think that it has any effect whatsoever on the results of the elections?
It is not likely to have, because it is negligible. As I said, we don't expect any perfect election. Even in America, we've had problems. In Britain, we had problems. So at this point in our march towards making democracy to be a permanent feature of our daily life, we cannot expect that all the problems we inherited will be resolved in one day. Now, if you look at the history, like my learning colleague said, check 1959, check 1962, 63, and all the rest, and all that, and all that. That will be. But what is the percentage?
And that's what matters.
Yes, but yes, we cannot get there. I mean, it's a process. It's a continuum. But sooner than later, when people see the futility, the irrelevance, and the irresponsibility of the action, I think they will drop it. And once we have better voters' education, things will be resolved. And once our politicians have decided to make democracy to function, and for democracy and the electoral process to be the drivers of our economy, then things will move better. And I think things are improving. I mean, the pockets of my fiancés you witness here and there can still be condoned. And all we are saying now is that the offenders should not go unpunished. Because in the past, it has not been possible to prosecute any electoral offender. And once we don't do that, because what is the essence of law? Is to sanction those who go against the law. And once we will not be able to apply that, people will continue to see, look, there's some sense in what I'm doing. But once they know that they could be sanctioned, they could be imprisoned, they could be arrested, they could be investigated, they could be prosecuted, and they could be convicted, and they could be sentenced, then we'll make some progress.
Oh, Dr. Dinkalu, I don't know if you followed that report from our correspondent in Bielsa, where she talked about in some polling units, ballot materials or election materials being hijacked. Thankfully, though, the security agencies were able to apprehend those people and the process was able to continue. How optimistic are you that this time around we will be able to get a hold of electoral offenders and ensure prosecution?
You know, I get asked this question all the time. Democracy is a process. It's not an event. Nation building is a process of perfecting the imperfect, knowing that we will never achieve perfection, but understanding that every generation has a responsibility to contribute to improving what they meet. And I do agree that we've not always done as well as we could in respect of ensuring accountability by electoral offenders. But as I tried, somebody else asked me this question or something similar yesterday, and I said, you know, in 2011, we did not know, nor indeed could we have thought, nor believed, that by 2014, a National Human Rights Commission in Nigeria will be recommending 41 senior politicians for prosecution for electoral-related offenses, election violence, intimidation, and breaches of the Electoral Act, and asking the Attorney General of the Federation to prosecute them. Now, that is progress. And that the people who were recommended included former governors and former acting governors and former speakers and senior senators and all of them. Now, democracy doesn't promise us that everything will happen in one moment, that magic is going to occur. What democracy promises us is that if we keep at it and allow institutions to do their best over time, we are going to improve. And that we've got to give institutions the latitude to perform their responsibilities. And I do trust that as we keep at this, all the institutions trying to do their bit, the police, the judiciary, National Human Rights Commission, INEC, the security services, and of course, trusting that the politicians grow up and stop instructing their attorneys general to enter discontinuance notices or nulli prosequi in cases of election violence. We are going to start prosecuting people and putting in jail the people who don't belong in the political process. I'm entirely confident about that.
Well, Captain, he said that that process is going to be a process. It is a process, and it was seem they were making incremental progress in the area of apprehending electoral offenders, beg your pardon. But do you think that this slow prosecution, as it will seem, could affect the morale of security agencies in terms of wanting to apprehend electoral offenders?
Well, it depends on what you call slow prosecution. Prosecution itself is a function of time because a lot of things come to play. Investigations, prosecution itself. Law is an area of my least competence, but I know that you don't arrest someone and get a ruling or a sentence instantly. What we can look to actually see that will motivate those who take the risk of arresting these offenders is a legal system that is not infracted, or do I say prevented from doing its job, or corrupted by vested interests. I recall the Navy, the Nigerian Navy, has had a running battle with a situation where you go out on patrol to sea, you bring in bunkerers, and after taking all the risk to do that, 4, 5, 6 weeks down the line, you meet them on sea again, and probably you are crestfallen. You won't.
Well, that's I don't want to say it's routine, but you know that happens very often. But I'm talking about this one is elections.
Yes.
You do know that a lot of money sometimes is involved. Sometimes people try to affect the sentiment of security agencies. They try to bribe them. I mean, that is something politicians do try to do. Do you think that when they resist all of that temptation, for this exercise that happens once in 4 years, and nothing is done about what they've been able to do, how do you think it affects their morale?
It does affect your morale when you do so much and you don't even get a well done. When you do so much and your successes are not celebrated. Now, I want you to understand something about these corrupt people. They are just very intelligent but dubious people. If you go into a very rigorous endeavor and your success is not celebrated, then one corrupt person wants to celebrate the success for you. You are probably going to tend towards that. But he has bankrolled you against what he may want to do tomorrow. So we are going to be seeing our institutions, much as we're going to be fighting corruption on the one hand, we're also going to be doing what I want to call a reward kind of approach to your performing your duties. So there has to be some form of reward. We have to start learning to celebrate the successes of these security operatives and soldiers institutionally. We don't have to celebrate success only when the president calls you and gives you a medal. Institutionally, you should celebrate success so that soldiers will be looking forward to doing it again tomorrow.
All right,
yes.
Thank you. All right, Captain, we'll just go over to your state to hear from the governor who spoke up yesterday after he voted. Now, we've heard from some other governors. We've heard from the governor of Kogi, we heard from the governor of Ondo, and now it's your state's turn. The governor says the election went well, and he says the electoral process in his state went smoothly, and he expected to get only a lot better. Governor Ajimobi.
I think this is the fourth time that I'm fully participating in voting, and I believe it is the smoothest, the easiest, and the most organized, and the most peaceful. I must commend INEC and all the people that are here, and Nigerians in general, for raising the standard and bringing integrity, honesty, and credibility to the exercise.
Apart from the fact that it didn't start at 8 o'clock, the accreditation has been smooth, the card reader is working, but that is different from the information we are getting from many other places. In many places, people have to go and buy spirits, homo, to see whether it will work. I mean, in most cases, it was still not working. So we only hope that this will not disenfranchise many of the voters.
Well, those were feeds from Oyo State, Nigeria's southwest region. Very quickly, this is where we will be taking a news break. The news will be coming on top of the hour. We still have a gentleman very much in the house. Professor Odinkalu is still very much with us in Abuja. We'll get back to you, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, just after the news. And of course, Dr. Fasi, you're still very much around. Captain Umar Aliyu, many thanks. You're still very much around. We'll go for the news, and when we return, we'll be taking more comments from our correspondents from across the country. And of course, you heard earlier on a report from Bayelsa State about snatching of ballots. And we will follow up on that particular one. And of course, I will be speaking with the police again on situation reports from across the country. Stay with us, Nigeria 2015, here on Channels Television. We'll be back.